Andrew, Angela, and Robert. So we got all 6.
Yep.
All right, Mayor Johnson, are you going to try to?
Yes, I will. At this time, I'd like to call the Town Board of North Wilkesboro meeting to order. And I'm going to lead us in a little invocation, please. And Michael, if you would please lead us in the pledge when I get through, sir. Let us pray. Our kind Heavenly Father, it's again we come to you, Lord, as humbly as we know how, thanking you, God, for each blessing of life that you bestow upon us, for the health and strength that you bless us with from day to day, and for giving us the opportunity to be able to come together to take care of the business of the town and our citizens. May we do it with your guidance and with your love. And we ask all this now in Christ Jesus' holy name. Amen.
I pledge of allegiance
to the
flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, Mayor, would you like for me to take us through the agenda?
Yes, if you would at this time, Wilson, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
And let you take us through our agenda. And thank everyone for being here. And if you would, please conduct the rest of the meeting or what you've got to say to us, Wilson. Yes, thank you.
So one of the things I'll mention at the jump is that the State General Assembly has approved this type of meeting under certain conditions. And one of the conditions is something that we did at our previous electronic meetings, and that is hold roll call votes. So when we get to the action items, I'll be calling each of the commissioners' names and having you share your vote that way. But before we get further into the agenda, I'd like to propose a slight change in the order of items. If we could move item F up to the front of the agenda. We have a few illustrious guests here, Mayor Inscore and Councilwoman Archibald from Wilkesboro, along with Leanne from the Wilkes EDC. I know that Leanne is here to talk about this item, and I presume that our Wilkesboro neighbors are here to talk about that item as well, and that's the Small Business Recovery Program. So I propose that we move that up to prior to the public comment period. And with that, we'll keep the order for the rest of the agenda.
Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the change to the agenda as stated by Wilson.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Debbie. It's good to hear your voice. And all those in favor signify by stating aye.
Oh, sorry. Hang on. We got to do the roll call vote. All right.
Okay. I'm sorry, Wilson.
No worries. Andrew.
Aye.
Angela. Angela, can you hear us? You can give a thumbs up if you want. Okay. Debbie.
Aye.
Bert.
Here.
Okay. And Michael.
Aye.
All right. In that case, we'll move on to item F, which is the Wilkes County Small Business Recovery Program donation. Before I turn it over to Leanne to talk about the program, I need to mention a unique procedural action that we have to take. And that is that after we talk about the substance of the item tonight, the action won't actually be to make the commitment yet. It will be to set a special meeting for Monday, May the 18th to approve the donation and to also hold a public hearing. Daniel and I reviewed the statute, and we both concluded that the statute requires this kind of contribution to an economic development agency needs a public hearing with a 10-day public notice period. And 10 business days from now would put us at May the 18th. We could wait till May the 28th at our workshop meeting to hold the hearing and take the vote if you'd like, but time is of the essence for this program. Leanne has mentioned that they have high interest and that they're probably going to get a lot of applications right out of the gate. And so in order to accelerate the transfer of money, if approved, I recommend calling a special meeting and having that be the one and only item on the agenda. So that's included in my proposal to tonight to not only discuss the meeting, but to take those procedural steps and set that special meeting if the board wants to go that way. But for now, I'll turn it over to Leanne. Is she still here? Yes, she is, to talk about the program. And I'll bring some things up on the screen for you to view and to read while she's talking. Leanne, if
all
you
right.
would.
Thank you for allowing me to be here to present tonight. As we discussed during one of your budget workshop meetings, we were working on the business recovery program plan, and we have made significant progress on that already. The business recovery plan is a program that would allow businesses to apply that have either been affected due to COVID and had to close their business, or they could be working at a much reduced level right now. They may have had to lay employees off, and we realize they're hurting, and so we're trying to do something to make sure that we sustain our small business community. We want them to reopen, remain strong, and bring back their employees. And so for that reason, we have put this program together for businesses the size of 2 to 15 employees that have been in business for at least 6 months. And there's several other guidelines that you'll be able to see under eligibility. The incentive is actually $2,000 that would be awarded to the businesses that complete a full application that is correct and have answered all the information correctly. And they would receive that $2,000 over 4 months. $500 a month would be paid towards either rent, mortgage, utility bills. It could be other fixed expenses that have been approved by the committee or could be considered by the committee. Maybe it's something we haven't thought of at this point, but it's a very valid reason, such as payroll, or it could be insurance, fixed costs. It could be protective equipment that businesses are going to need to be able to reopen. So there's things like that that we are willing to consider. They have to be located in Wilkes County. They've got to be able to prove that they're in good tax standing and that they have attempted to try to find funding. But what we are hearing is that for the smaller businesses, it's more challenging to receive funding, to get in line and to actually get the application through. There's been several hiccups in the whole financial program with SBA lending. And so we realized that even if they have been able to get in, it may not be enough to sustain them. And so that's why we are putting this program together, and with the goal to try to keep people employed. Let's stay in business. Let's make sure those services, the retail stores, the restaurants, that they are there when we come back and are able to open again. We have a goal of $200,000 and assisting 100 businesses. So far, we have been fortunate to have donors such as the Heron Foundation, who has committed $50,000 towards this program. Lowe's has committed once again to our community $25,000 towards this program, both expressing how important it is to see us as a strong community pull out of this. And then we, as LEAP investors, which is the private side of funding in Wilkes Economic Development, has said that they would contribute between $30,000 and $50,000 depending on participation from our local government. They would like to encourage that participation to actually happen. And then we have had a few undisclosed donors. And so with that, if we were to be able to put the LEAP funding all the way up to the maximum of $50,000, we would be somewhere around $135,000 right now, assisting up to 67 businesses. I know we're very grateful last night that the town of Wilkesboro did say that if all local government entities participate, that they would contribute up to $20,000 towards this program. So that would help us push our goal, our numbers up towards our goal, and be able to help more businesses. And so tonight I'm here to ask for the commissioners to consider that the town of North Wilkesboro also participate in this program at a level of what Wilkesboro is asking of $20,000 or more. The more that we receive, the more businesses we can help. And so keep in mind also that we're opening up the invitation to others to join us in this effort. We can reach more in volume, in the amount of funds that we have available. We'll be able to help more businesses. We'll keep this program alive as long as we can, trying to make a difference in our community. They'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have tonight. I would also add another interesting thing is through the push that we have started with marketing this program, we were able to put together a Facebook video and push that out through social media. We have completed 3 interviews with radio stations. We are to be scheduled to be on Charter TV and potentially Wilkes Communications. Also, Wilkes Journal Patriot, The Record, and it just goes on and on. But through our Facebook reach, we've already had the opportunity to get in front of 2,800 people already, with 346 engagements, and my phone has been busy since yesterday.
Dan, I have a question. You also are providing a marketing side assistance program, if I remember correct, seeing the information that came from the EDC. So how is that being funded?
So thank you, Commissioner Parsons. And we have also often opened up an opportunity for marketing assistance. We felt it's so important right now. If you do not have a website page or a business Facebook page, it's very challenging to sell your products or to get your services out to people in our community, or maybe even expand your reach and increase your clientele much further with online presence. And so for that reason, Wilkes Economic Development has taken a portion of our operations budget that we typically put towards Merle Fest, and we're still supporting Merle Fest for next year when we're able to come back and do that again. But we typically host guests that are interested in either bringing their business to Wilkes County, or maybe their new corporate relationships that we have developed, site selectors, people of that nature. And so we are able to take that money and we're putting that towards this program for marketing assistance. And with those funds, we can put $500 towards creating a simple website page, getting a domain name, making sure that fees are covered for at least 3 months. And also, along with that, you really need that business Facebook page. So we have negotiated with pre-approved designers to work with us and be able to assign 10 to 12 businesses on online presence of receiving that marketing grant. So while the request tonight specifically to the town of North Wilkesboro is for the business recovery program, we definitely encourage those in the community that might be able to support one more business that could be online. If we, since we're a nonprofit, we can do tax deductible donations. So we encourage that participation in our community. Let's make a difference.
Oh, this is Andrew. Leanne, can you hear me?
Yes.
I've got a few questions here. I was able to listen in last night with meeting with Wilkesboro, so that was helpful. First of all, I just want to say that I think it's a good idea. I feel like that small businesses should be the backbone of our local economy, and I know they're hurting. And I've talked to some business owners, and they feel like this will help them. I like this is a great thing for like the private donors and foundations to support, and I'd really urge them to consider it if they haven't already. It's a little more risky for the local governments because we don't know what might come with the COVID-19 stuff over the next year, and we don't know what expenses we might have. So that makes it more risky for us. In normal times, I probably wouldn't consider it, but knowing the specific situation going on, I think it would be helpful. And I know we had talked about 30,000 last week, and I'll let the rest of the board talk about the number, but what I know about it, I'd be okay with doing 20,000 like Wilkesboro said, and also the county, but I do have a few questions if it's okay if I ask them.
Yes, sir.
So, Commissioner Palmer.
One of my concerns is just making sure that all businesses know about it, and not just businesses that I would say are quote unquote like in the loop on things, but you know, there's a lot of businesses that have served our community, North Wilkesboro, but also the county for years that maybe for whatever reason, maybe they're not real, media savvy, or maybe it's a business where like English is a second language, like Shanghai Express up near Food Line, or Fuji at the bottom of 2nd Street, or La Fortuna or something, people that maybe could really use the help but don't know about it. So I would like to kind of know about how we're going to let businesses know it's available versus people that just know about the EDC. And I would also like to know a little more about the process of how do we make it fair when businesses do apply for it. And I guess just what that process is in general. And that's kind of it. So I guess I would have 2 questions.
All right, I had not thought about the different languages, so I appreciate that recommendation. That may be something that we could address and take any of our grant guidelines and put them in a different form for it to be more accessible to those that might be of a second language. So we can work on that. That should be fairly easy to do that on our website. And potentially, I'm not sure how Facebook is handled, but that's a possibility. So I'll look into that. The ways that we have been advertising, as we identified 3 radio stations that are specifically targeted to Wilkes County. And so we've already done interviews with those 3, and they are promoting that at no charge over the next week, and they'll follow us and watch the progress on this program and update. And they're looking forward to us coming back and talking about the success and who we've been able to help. So that is an ongoing relationship. Wilkes Journal Patriot, the Record, we've made sure that today we've worked real hard with those folks to make sure that ads are going to be in print form, at the same time that we are very grateful for the opportunity for articles to have been written covering the guidelines, and it'll be online on their websites. In addition to our Facebook, our web page, we created a COVID business resource page that has a lot of information that's available. But additionally, we created links at the top of our website where you can go directly into the landing pages where the guidelines will live. And then on Monday, May the 11th, when the application process opens, the application can be accessed there, or we have also given instruction in our guidelines that you could pick up guidelines at our town locations. They can be grateful for the opportunity that Wilson allowed us to be able to use this North Wilkesboro service window as a drop-off point where applications could be turned in. They would just be time-stamped. And Robin and I are just across the street, so it would be an easy, safe place for us to pick up applications as they come in once we open this program. So there is a way that written form can be completed, as well as what we encourage would be through the website. That will be our preferred recommendation on how to receive applications. As far as fairness, the committee, the task force that came together on this, that was a very important topic to all of us. And that's why we chose to just market the program for 1 week, as hard as we can go, and then open it at a given time where everyone has already had the chance to see the guidelines and what type of documentation would be required. Open it, and then begin with the first, number of applicants that we have funding for, and get started in trying to help those folks. Why it's crucial and important. They're making decisions right now about whether to remain in business or, potentially to close their doors. So we feel like it's really important to get started with what we have and move as fast as we can. I think I also didn't mention TV. Charter, we've arranged for information to be on Charter, and we've also talked with Wilkes Communications. So those are all our social media efforts, in addition to tapping all of our partners, our resource partners, to reach out to every contact that you have to make sure they're aware this program is going on.
One thing, this is Andrew again. One thing that I've done is I saw your video yesterday. I shared it on Facebook. I've actually called some businesses, emailed them, told them about it. And I would ask all the other board members, if you know business owners, do the same. Wilkesboro do the same, the county. And I would say maybe particularly think about people that are older, that have been in business a long time, that may not be as savvy on these things. And if they need help, maybe direct them to the EDC or help them what you can, and maybe other people. And I guess to be a little more specific about what I was saying about, I guess, fairness, it's not really a fairness question, but is there any way to know, I guess this would just be impossible to know, what businesses could really use it versus some that have been up and running and maybe are doing okay, that it would just kind of pad their bank account. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, our thoughts are that we've asked for 3 months of bank statements at least. We're also going to verify they've been in business. We're going to verify that they are in good tax standing with local government, both towns and county, on personal and any property, taxes that they have. There's also a lot of questions that we're asking in the application about, why do you feel you need this grant? How will it make a difference? Tell us about things that you've already applied for. Have you talked to your landlord about concessions or forgiveness, or at least leniency? One thing we realize is that even if that is happening, if they're putting off when the debt is due, they're going to come out of this once we reopen and hopefully allow them to get back in business and making some profits again. But it's still going to be debt hanging over their head. And that's one reason why we did not go with loans versus a grant. And it is a little high risk. We have to admit that we don't know. No business owner knows if they can survive this. But what they can do is feel our support and hang on and hopefully make it through and keep pushing through. If we keep trying to help in some way, we want to offer counseling with these businesses too. So it's not just about awarding a grant and doing a monthly payment transaction, but it's beginning a relationship with them to stay close to them and try to find other ways to help them through.
Thank you for your,
are not awarded the grant. We want to counsel those folks too.
Thank you for your time, Leanne. Sorry to take so long. And also, just one more comment. I'd like to say your marketing program for helping businesses get online and stuff. I would like to see that be like an ongoing thing, because I think that's a great resource. And thank you all. I know that took a while. Sorry.
This is Debbie, and I would like to say that North Wilkesboro is home to a lot of small businesses, as is Wilkesboro and the county. And I feel strongly that we need to support people through this really strange time. And no one has lost business and had to close because they wanted to. They have done it because our governments have asked people to help keep us safe and to not overwhelm our healthcare system with sick people. So they're doing it to be good Americans, and I feel like we need to try to support them as much as we can. And in looking at the $200,000 goal that the EDC has for this program, I would like to see us donate $30,000. I believe that we can afford to do that at this point of time. We can never know what the future brings. We do have general funds set aside, the rainy day funds for operation if needed, but this is a time when people do need help. And if each governmental entity contributes as much as they can, thoughtfully and sensibly do, I believe we can help the people of our community. And our manager also feels that we can give $30,000 to this program. So I do recommend that we support the $30,000 level. Thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners?
This is Commissioner Day. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say, as being a downtown business owner and watching the progress of what's happened in downtown, how we've closed, it's been a very stressful time for every downtown retailer and business. We've all felt it, we've lived it, and I think that I'm very appreciative of the town of North Wilkesboro stepping up to fund the $30,000, because I know we have a lot of wonderful business owners that want to continue and they want to have a healthy business, and I think we should do everything possible to make that happen. And thank you.
Mayor Inscore or Commissioner or Councilwoman Archibald, would you all like to share?
I will say this about the Wilkesboro Town Council. The council deliberated between themselves, and I was brought in on the tail end of it. For what it's worth, initially we were talking about a lesser amount than what we approved, but in fairness to the program, we felt like we could up it up another $5,000, and Councilwoman Archibald made the motion, and it was fully supported by the balance of the town council. So I support the motion and vote that was taken, and hopefully there will be other businesses that Leanne can approach that are very successful businesses, local businesses, and I really think that there's more money that can be raised if the EDC will reach out to them. And several in Wilkesboro that, Leanne, if you'd like my assistance with you in approaching the people, I'll be more glad to do so.
Absolutely. I'll follow up with you, Mayor Inscore.
I concur with what Mike said. I think it's a good program and a needed program. Appreciate the EDC taking the lead on this.
All right, so I brought up on the screen the agenda item for this topic. And as you can see, it lists the actions that need to be taken tonight, those procedural steps that we need to follow. And so if the board is ready, I'd appreciate a motion for those last two items listed there.
Wilson, I will make the motion first that we call for a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners on Monday, May 18th, 2020, to hold a public hearing and take a vote on the contribution. And I would like us to consider a contribution of $30,000 to the EDC for this grant program.
I second the motion.
All right, Debbie and Michael. Can I have a motion to call the public hearing?
Oh, I think I did them both in one.
Okay.
So that.
All right. All right, so let's do the roll call vote. We'll start with Andrew.
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Debbie,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
and Bert.
Do. I do.
Okay.
I do.
So, all right. So we'll arrange for that meeting. We'll advertise it as appropriate, and I'll send out the information for us to consider on that day. Appreciate Leanne being here and our neighbors from across the river. You all are welcome to stay, but thank you for your contribution on this item.
Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight and sharing your support and your confidence in the committee that will review these applications. And we appreciate any other feedback along the way.
Thank you, Leanne.
We sign off and join our county commissioners. Hope you have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wilson.
Wilson, just,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Andrew. Wilson, just one quick order. Item 6, the public comments. We kind of skipped over that part just in case some of the participants in the meeting would like to speak. I just was going to just bring that point of order up.
Yes, sir. Well, that's where we're going next. So we'll move into the public comment period. I know that we've got a couple of folks on the line who are here to speak on a matter that's come up. So Mr. Mueller and Ms. Murphy, I think you all are here to speak, correct?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, so we'll go to Mr. Mueller first, if that's okay. Mr. Mueller, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you for giving us this chance. I want to especially thank Meredith and yourself for helping this get to this place anyway with it. So
if you could speak up a little bit, sir.
Sure. So I'm the manager of the bicycle shop at Cook Sports, a local company, and we've asked that it would be allowed to put a sign up around town, just notifying cars and drivers about the law that should give bicyclists a 4-foot margin when passing. This law became effective December of 2018. The number of bicyclists right now, especially with what's going on, is increased significantly. And I think it's just an opportunity to make our roads a little bit safer. Cook Sports, we're more than happy to make these signs ourselves, to put them out. And on a given date, whatever your choice, we would be happy to bring them back up. We just think that it would serve the community in terms of safety. We're also looking to create a more of a bicycle awareness in the community. We think this is a great opportunity for that as well. We're working with the town to hopefully add more bicycle racks. Town of Wilkesboro is working with us as well. And we're looking to do things at a cost basis. So these are just things that are on our heart, and we want to see it be done the town of Wilkesboro has given us permission. We're going to see these signs around the county as well. It's just a public service thing, just trying to help get this message out there, and for people that are on bikes right now, that it'd be a safer place for them.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'll throw it to Heather. I think she's going to comment on the same topic.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Heather Murphy, the Executive Director of the Health Foundation, and I'm going to briefly, okay, never mind. I was going to try to share a screen, but that's okay. I just wanted to say thank you to the mayor and the commissioners who participated in a project that is still ongoing with the Health Foundation. We were awarded a grant through the Aetna Foundation to consider how we might improve walkability and bikeability in North Wilkesboro. It came out of a group of third grade children who attended an event at Benton Hall, who said that if they could improve their homes, that what they would most want to see is better access to bicycling. And we had a team of people who worked for the last year in developing a number of prototypes that we hope to move forward with as the COVID-19 response, as our community opens back up. But we had a number of North Wilkesboro businesses participate in a bike-friendly business prototype, saying that people could drink their water, use their restrooms, and borrow a bike pump. We are still prototyping a bike share program. The mayor was one of the folks who was interviewed who said he felt very strongly that recreational cycling was where we needed to start. And that was echoed by a lot of people in the community. And so we are working with cooks and other folks and folks in Wilkesboro, ultimately to develop some bike share kiosks for adults. We also prototyped an idea for children to borrow bikes at Smoot Park, and they had a blast. We're also about to fund a program that will repair bicycles. We went to some lower income neighborhoods and just set up and said, bring your bikes to us and let us fix them. And we fixed several dozen bikes in an afternoon and saw children out there playing and getting healthy exercise. So that's something we want to carry forward. I think, Wilson, that you were on your second day on the job when we tried to prototype our bike block party. There's a lot of excitement for closing the streets of North Wilkesboro and having games and parades and bike rides and all of that. Our prototype was absolutely drenched by hurricane type winds that day, but there was a lot of enthusiasm and we look forward to doing that. We also had a bike education camp. We were able to present this research at the National Bike Summit. We were supposed to have gone to Washington, D.C. to do so. It ended up being a virtual meeting because of the COVID-19 program. But I just want to thank all the commissioners, the mayor, and everyone in the town of North Wilkesboro, like Wilson, who participated in this research. And I look forward to coming back to you with more ideas about how we can promote healthy cycling and walking in our community. So just a big shout out to thank you all for all you do to contribute to a healthier community. Thank you.
Wilson, could I ask how do we need to give permission for the signs to be posted, or do we need to vote, or bicycle month?
I'm pulling up on the screen now a additional action item for you to consider. These signs cannot be put up administratively by us here on staff. They typically would not be permitted by our zoning ordinance, and the ordinance doesn't give Meredith or I the ability to permit them administratively. We have to have permission from you all. And to give us an extra little bit of protection, the zoning ordinance usually only allows these kind of signs if they're put up to promote some sort of civic activity. And so the action that I'm recommending you take, if you're interested, and if this is something you want to pursue, is to proclaim the month of May as National Bike Month in the town of North Wilkesboro. And as a complimentary action, authorize the placement of these signs temporarily in the town's right-of-way for the month of May. And that's described on the document here in front of you.
Well, I would
Justin,
make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael.
Being one that appreciates bicycling in North Wilkesboro, I'd like to make the motion to approve the proclamation making the month of May 2020 National Bike Month in the town of North Wilkesboro, and authorize the placement of temporary signs forthwith.
And I've got the
I'll second that.
here. Can you all see the proclamation? No, I don't think you can. Hang on.
Not anymore.
I could.
I've got it. Is that it right there? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Michael made the motion. Debbie, did you second?
I did.
Okay. All right. So any more questions from the board? Let's do a roll call vote. Andrew.
Yes.
Angela.
Yes.
Debbie.
Yes.
Bert.
No, I think. I may.
Okay. And Michael.
I agree.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you're up or down, Bert?
I'm up.
Okay. Okay.
Up.
All right. Thank you. And Michael?
Yes.
Okie doke.
Thank you all, and
All
good
right.
night.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Mr. Mueller.
Bye-bye.
All right. All right, so we'll move on to consent now. I'll be happy to take these by exception and answer questions if you have any, but I'm hoping that we can approve these all in one motion.
Wilson, can we just make a motion right now?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as written in the minutes. Written in the agenda.
I'll second that. Angela.
Thank you. All right. All in favor, Andrew?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Debbie? Debbie, are you, give us a thumbs up. You were muted. Okay. Bert? And Michael?
Yes.
All right. All right, so we'll move on to the town manager's report. I do have a report today. My report covers a couple different areas. The first is, as you probably just heard, the governor had a press conference at 5 o'clock where he announced that this Friday the 8th at 5 p.m., he would be implementing a modified stay-at-home order. And the modified stay-at-home order is essentially the first very careful step in reopening the state. So the modified stay-at-home order, we'll find out more here in the next day, I imagine, from the press and from the school government and other sources that have been guiding us through this. I'll just give a summary based on my notes. So just know that this is brand new news and we'll know more in the coming hours and days. But essentially the high-level highlights of the modified stay-at-home order are: it removes the distinction between essential and non-essential businesses. Non-essential businesses may reopen. However, they have to follow a occupancy standard of no more than 50% of their stated fire occupancy limit. And they must implement social distancing practices in the facility. Some businesses that cannot practice social distancing, like gyms, salons, bars, and theaters, must still remain closed. He mentioned something about playgrounds staying closed, but I want to see the text of the executive order before I comment on that anymore. Gatherings are still limited to 10, and worship services of more than 10 are now allowed outdoors if social distancing measures are implemented. This order will go for 2 weeks, and if we see further progress on the trends that the governor's been using, he'll move us into phase 2 on May 22nd. The flip side is that if the trends start to turn bad, we might move back into a full stay at home on May 22nd. So the next 2 weeks and our modified stay at home, partial reopening are a time to sort of observe the effects of opening back up. So like I said, we'll know more in the hours and days to come. The other thing that the governor launched during his press conference was a new way to remember the steps that you should take to keep yourself safe as you emerge from your home and start going out in public a little bit more over the next 2 weeks. And that is the 3 W's. It used to stand for World Wide Web a long time ago. Now it stands for wear, as in wear a face mask, wait, as in wait 6 feet apart when you're at the store, and wash your hands frequently. So that'll be the siren call of the governor's task force over the next few weeks. The 3 W's: wear, wait, and wash. All right, so that's the breaking news from 5 o'clock today. The other part of my report was the short session of the General Assembly started last week, a week ago today, and I think they're going to adjourn soon. But the main thing they were going to do during this session was pass some COVID related legislation, and they did that. Both the House and the Senate passed bills, and I'll go over the highlights of both of those here. House Bill 1043, known as the 2020 COVID Recovery Act, is essentially the House appropriating some of the state's reserve funds to various programs involved in helping fight the virus. It establishes a relief fund of approximately $1.2 billion to fund various relief-related activities, including, and I'm going to go over just a few, but know that there's dozens and dozens, a $50 million allocation to create a PPE stockpile for the state, $150 million to reimburse counties for emergency expenses, $70 million for continuity of operations expenses from the state government, $300 million to North Carolina DOT to essentially get back in business because they had some cash flow issues and they had to lay off a lot of people. So this will be a little relief for them. A little over $20 million to Baptist Hospital to do research on antibody testing. $200 million or so to the Department of Public Instruction to fund various things related to educating the state students during this time. $65 million to rural hospitals, and this is one I noticed because some of that money might come to our facility here locally. And $125 million to Golden Leaf for small business assistance. So depending on how that program pans out, our local businesses here will have the opportunity to apply for local funds, but also some state funds via the Golden Leaf organization. I want to go back to the $150 million that I talked about earlier going to counties. The legislation specifically said that if the federal government amends the CARES Act, because that's where this money's coming from. It's coming from the feds via the CARES Act to the states. Currently, it's only counties are only eligible for that money to help pay for emergency-related expenses. But if the federal government will amend that act, the state government has already said that they will apply some of that $150 million to help counties and municipalities make up for revenue shortfalls. So that's a change that would be very beneficial for us. And let's hope and let's lobby our federal lawmakers to amend their law in that way so that we can be eligible for some of those funds to help us balance our budget. Some of the other things in the House bill include providing Medicaid coverage for uninsured folks who need virus testing. Okay, let's skip to the Senate bill. You know, oftentimes when you hear people talk about politics, they use the term an omnibus bill. I would consider both these bills omnibus bills because they cover a little bit of everything. They're not just about one topic. They're about everything you could imagine under the sun. Senate Bill 704 is called An Act to Provide Aid to North Carolinians in Response to the COVID-19 Crisis. And whereas the House bill was mostly about money, the Senate bill is mostly about changing or amending state regulations that were prohibiting a more effective response. Its first section extends the tax filing deadline to July 15th. The feds had already done that. This act does that for the state tax deadline. The rest of the bill essentially codifies many of the administrative and regulatory actions that the governor has taken in his executive orders so far. A representative sample is a section that requires school systems to develop remote instruction plans for the next academic year. Calling for the creation of the state PPE stockpile that's funded in the House bill, and a number of other clauses that address administrative or regulatory hurdles that were slowing the state's response. It also extends protection from certain liabilities from certain liability claims to medical providers and essential businesses. And there's a couple of administrative changes in here that we've been concerned about over the last few weeks, and we finally have some clarity about in this bill. The first one is this thing that we're doing here. It clarifies, as I mentioned earlier, that electronic meetings are legal under certain conditions, and some of those conditions are, as I said, that we do roll call votes, that we make the meeting accessible for the public to join, and we advertise the link. And we've been doing that. The tool that we use, and Zoom, I think, meets these criteria, must allow each member of the public body to be seen by the other members of the public body, heard by the other members of the public body, and seen and heard by other participants in the call. And I think that the Zoom platform does that. So we're already doing much of these. These were best practices that we assumed were going to be necessary to hold this kind of meeting. But now the state, they're now codified in state law. The other requirements that it puts on local governments are it clarifies what public inspection of the budget means. When we move on to the budget item here in a minute, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Allows virtual meetings, but it's also going to require all counties and municipalities to submit a report to the Local Government Commission by the end of the calendar year on the effects the crisis has had on our financial picture. And there's a big paragraph in here that lists all the things we have to report. So Connie and I will have a little extra work here at the end of the calendar year, compiling that information for the Local Government Commission. And finally, the Senate bill gives state regulatory agencies additional flexibility to waive requirements or to amend their requirements as needed in response to the virus. So This is a necessary bill and an important bill, and I credit the General Assembly for coming together. It was passed unanimously in both houses, and working through this quickly and establishing some vehicles for relief for local governments, for businesses, but also clarifying some of these legal and administrative questions that have come up as a result of the state of emergency. So I'll throw it to Danny now and see if he has anything to report or anything else he wants to add on this topic.
I don't have a report, but I've been looking at the executive order, just went online earlier, and I think it's relevant to some of our emergency declarations. There is specific prohibitions against opening public playground equipment. State parks and trails can reopen, but public playgrounds are to remain closed.
Danny, does it say anything about, does it preempt municipalities from taking stricter action, or do we still have the opportunity to set standards here locally if we choose?
Bear with me just 1 second. I've not gotten through all of it yet. We can impose greater restrictions if we choose.
Okay. So the last thing I'll report to the group is that the mayors and the chair of the county commissioner, along with the managers, are meeting tomorrow morning at 9 to discuss our local response. And we should know more tomorrow that we'll report out to you. Any questions or comments?
President, I have one comment about the, I would really like to see all government bodies. So that also means the county commissioners, in addition to the 3 municipalities. I would like to see a joint resolution where all members, if you've got one governmental entity that is not willing to go along with the other 2 entities or the other 3 entities, I would like to see y'all negotiate a way so that it's a unified joint statement from all governmental bodies, so that because right now there's a slight difference between the municipalities and the county government. And I think that sets a bad precedence. I think you guys all need to be on exactly the same page so that we're all presenting a united front. So I would strongly encourage you that in your meeting tomorrow, that y'all work out a compromise that y'all can all be unified behind.
Wilson, can I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
I'm literally just reading this. One thing, our local restrictions can't set different retail requirements. So even though we can impose stricter limitations in some respects, the governor's order to create uniformity across the state for retail businesses, any local prohibitions and restrictions imposed under our local declarations that set any kind of different maximum occupancy standard are preempted.
Okay, thank you, Danny.
Wilson, this is Andrew.
Yes, sir.
With what Danny just said, does that mean that retail places will be able to open, or is that something you guys still have to discuss tomorrow to figure out with the situation where it's already at the 15th, where you were putting a little more restrictions, or how does that work?
I think what that means is that we could decide to keep businesses closed, but if we elect to go along and let the businesses open, we couldn't impose more severe occupancy standards. So now it's 50%. We couldn't say 25%. We got to go with 50% on that one. So if we enable people to open at all, we got to follow the 50% occupancy standard. And I imagine that Danny's looking through it to make sure that there are no other clauses that are preempted by the state. But that's one of the things we'll go over tomorrow.
I would like to also kind of support what Michael said and encourage you to see the other municipalities do something together. I think it's real important for North Wilkesboro and Wilkesboro just because we're physically in such a close proximity. But when you think about Wilkes as a whole and Rhonda, it's one community. Also, I'm really worried about the virus. I think we all should be with the spike in cases. With that being said, I think we need to have a balance between public health and economic safety. I think one link between those things is going to be getting good information out to businesses as they open on protocols that they can keep their employees and customers safe. And I think just mask, I think we need to attribute wearing masks to like not just public health, but also economic safety, because I believe that that's what's going to help open the economy up. And with that being said, like I've spoke to you about some of you about it. I was at up the 421 corridor near Walmart, Lowe's Hardware over the weekend, and there were so many people out and about that you could hardly find a parking space. It was like Black Friday at Christmas. And I just feel like it defies reason to think that that is safe. And I feel like it would be hard to police that. And with that in mind, I'm 100% behind seeing our retail stores open, and I would encourage you to do that. I know that means bringing maybe more risk, but I would make the argument that the greatest risk is at Lowe's, Walmart, where lots of people are coming together, and not at our small businesses. And it's putting such a strain and a stress on our small businesses. And I've heard from the community and from some business owners too, but just when I think about the functionality of it, I would really encourage you to urge the other towns to consider that. And I also just like to say, from my heart, I feel like you and Robert, or the Mayor Johnson, y'all have done a real good job making us look professional and staying in front of things. And I appreciate y'all doing that. So thank you for your time.
Mayor, do you have anything you want to add? If so, unmute yourself and before you share.
Can you hear me, Wilson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to say to the group, I really appreciate each and every one of you, each comment that's been made about safety and doing what we can to get our retail back up and going. But I had rather know in my decision that I would err on the side of safety than I would on the either death or sickness. And that's where I stand. And I hope that the Board of Commissioners will support that. And even though I have I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Wilson, I have that ultimate decision to be able to carry on what we have set down, we being North Wilkesboro and Rhonda, in the not ordinance, but the mandate that we printed out and sent out. And it's been in the paper. And if you hadn't seen it, Wilson, you can make sure everybody sees it. But that's where I am with this thing. And as far as Andrew, your comment about the box stores up 421, parking lots almost full, they have a whole lot wider area to distance, even though I've not been in the stores, I'm not going to. They have a whole lot wider area to distance than we do down here on the main street of our little town to be able to stay safe from this virus. And from what I understand, we've had some other cases to be reported here in the county. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but that's about all I've got to say about it, Wilson. And I would like to say, I don't know if he's still there or not, but I appreciate Mayor Inscore coming over and being a part of his comments on what we're going to do for the $30,000. And I echo Debbie's comment. Let's go ahead and do that. I think we can afford to do it. And thank you very much for everybody being on board for the meeting this afternoon. And that's about all I've got, Wilson.
Thank you, sir. All right, anyone, any final comments on COVID-19 update? Yes, sir, Michael.
I just have one thing, and I maybe it's me speaking as a local business owner as opposed to a commissioner, but I would strongly urge you, Mayor Johnson, to, as far as the economic considerations, that the please consider the guidance from the governor. I think the governor is recognizing the importance of the economic sector, especially small businesses to communities. So, I mean, I understand your concern and desire for safety, and I would never say that I would put financial well-being above personal life and health. But my thing is just keep in mind that if we destroy the bone of our community, then there's going to be more fallout long term. You know, so I'm not telling you to put one over the other, but understand that I do feel that the governor has teams of people on his side that are advising him, and at the point he's feeling that we can begin to move forward, just take that in advisement.
This is Angela. I had a quick question or concern. How are we going to communicate to our businesses downtown the amount of people and occupancy they can have, particularly with the weekend coming up with Mother's Day, which is much busier time than most, that we can make sure they feel comfortable with the amount of people in the stores and are actually doing it correctly?
I don't know. You know, we'll use our traditional means of communication. We'll post things on social media. We'll post things on our website. We'll try to get detailed information to the newspapers to publish. But other than that, I hadn't thought that far ahead. I do agree that we probably need some clever ways of communicating that so that folks will know and will abide by the rules so that they can open safely.
Well, and I think in the coming months or weeks, it'd be great to, maybe we need to do some kind of Facebook messaging privately for retailers to be able to communicate with each other. How can we help each other? Somehow we need to rally together, but yet not all be in the same room, of course, to be able to support each other and guide each other.
Yeah.
Maybe Crystal might be a good point person for that.
You know, I've heard about other cities who've talked about having their code inspectors, whose job it is to go out and make sure businesses are following the town code, go out and make sure businesses are following these, amended codes, these updated codes for this time. And so, there's a possibility of doing that, although we have we only have one inspector. We have fire inspectors, but they are doing more important things. And I'm also a little reluctant about sending our staff people, around through the community where they could be exposed. So I don't know, but that's something I've heard of others doing. So I don't know. We'll have to think on that, but know that we'll use all our traditional means to the fullest extent.
Well, and I truly believe that retailers are as concerned about being exposed to you as you are exposed to me. I think it's just a new time that we're going to have to make some concessions and live a little differently.
All right. Anyone else?
I've got a couple of thoughts. I forgot. I think when she says live differently, one of the things is going to be ways to keep people safer. I think wearing masks and sanitizer, and there's local sources of those things. Because if you look online, it's really hard to find some. But we have the distilleries making sanitizer. There's a couple manufacturers, got Henson and Hill Medical Technologies, Luray, and even private people making masks. And I spoke to Heather, that was just with us from the Health Foundation, Heather Murphy, and she said that they had actually bought some masks that that people can get from them for free, if I understand correctly. So I would be really interested in seeing if our town, if nobody else does it, if our town has the capacity, but if not, maybe with the other towns and the counties, but just let employers know. I mean, you're going to have some employers that aren't going to follow things as good as they should. And you're going to have some that really genuinely want to make their place safer, but maybe they don't know how. So information would help, and maybe they don't know where to get the stuff. So giving them some local resources to get that, maybe just a little piece of paper or something, or would be nice for them. And also just want to say, like, I spoke to some business owners, spoke to one guy who's afraid that, if things don't change, he could lose his business and his house. And so, like Michael was saying, there's other consequences. And I'm not a health expert, but I definitely feel like you're taking less risk by going in a small business where you have an owner that, like Angela said, may be afraid of catching it themselves and would take precautions and maybe just not even open their doors, maybe do curb service or maybe let a few people in versus going where there's a lot of people. And I'm also afraid that if we continue to hold things down, that you may start seeing businesses like we already have in Wilkesboro with Brands Jewelry, like places are just going to open up on their own, and then that puts us in a weird predicament too. But I understand balance and safety for public health because I'm super concerned about it. We all should be. If you're in the higher scoop, you should stay home. If you don't have to go out at all, you should stay home. I mean, the virus is out there, and we need to stress that to people, but also, if we crush our little businesses, some of them may not be there when we open up. And what does that mean for their families? I would argue we're not safe if they don't have a home or food or their business or a livelihood. But I respect the mayor's position and anybody who agrees with that position, because this is a scary thing. And I would think we should definitely be worried about the public health aspect. So thanks for letting me speak a little extra on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. As you know, as an elected official, I have tried to set example and wear a mask and use hand sanitizer and make good choices. And I'd like to encourage us all to do so. We are we're the people that I hope that our citizens and constituents trust us, and I want them to be as safe and healthy as all of us do. And so I encourage you guys on town staff and town board to, set the example.
Any last comments on this item? All right, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, Part E. So this is the statutorily required delivery of my recommended budget to you. I think that you all pretty much know, because of our workshops, what it contains, but the statutes outline a specific process that you have to follow, and today is part of that process. So I'm going to deliver to you this evening, and I'll send a hard copy your way if you'd like. Let me find it here. A copy of my recommended budget. We'll post this on the website for folks to review. Up until this week, we had to provide a physical copy in Town Hall for folks to review, but the actions of the General Assembly made it so that an electronic copy was sufficient. And the thing I'm going to ask you to do tonight, after I go through the highlights, is to call for a public hearing on June the 2nd, so that residents and other interested parties can share their opinions on this budget. I'll also ask you to consider approving the document that night, But I know that sometimes folks can make a compelling case to change something. And so if you hear something that you want to change, the thing that you approve that night will need to include that amendment. So you can approve this document as it's written, or you can amend this document based on what you hear between now and then. But one way or the other, I'll ask that you approve a budget on June the 2nd. We have the whole month of June to do it, and theoretically we could do it in our second meeting of the month in June, but that's too close to comfort for me. And so I'd ask that you consider approving something on June the 2nd. But tonight, I'll ask you to receive this report and also to call for a public hearing on June the 2nd. All right, so I'm going to go through the document here. Like I said, I'll send you a copy of this shortly, and a hard copy if you'd like. This is the budget document. It's going to look a little bit different than the budget document you've seen in the past, a little bit more information. This is what the boys from Appalachian helped me put together. We didn't quite get where I wanted it to be, but we got it better than it was before, so I'm satisfied with our progress. I'm hoping that next year we can add a little bit more information and apply for the Distinguished Budget Certificate from the Government Finance Officers Association. But for now, I'm just going to go through it. The first thing you'll see that's new in this year's document is a table of contents. And when I send you a PDF, these links are enriched, so you can click on one of them and it'll take you to that page. This document also contains just some summary information on the types of things you're going to see in the document, a primer on how to read the tables that you'll see. It contains my manager's discussion, and this is one of the things that's required by law. And I'll give you an opportunity to read through that later on your own time. It's got the actual ordinance that you'll be voting on. Technically, this is the only thing you have to vote on, but of course, it's best practice to give you much more detailed information than just this. But this is the ordinance that will go on the books once you all approve it. Perhaps amended, but for now, this is the recommended. As you can see here, I do not recommend a change in the tax rate. I recommend that we maintain our 52 cent per $100 of valuation property tax rate. That rate is decidedly average. Wilkesboro's is 48, Elkins is 55. So ours is slotted right there in the middle of our neighbors. It does not recommend any changes to other fees or charges that the town charges, with the exception of the water rates that we'll talk about a little later. Strategic plan, it lists some of the goals that you all established at your retreat back in March. I think it's safe to confess that some of these have been turned on their ear because of the crisis, but I wanted to record them here as a way to acknowledge that staff will try to work on these in the coming year. As you can see here, a couple of them have dollar signs next to them. Those are programs that we funded in the budget. Now, you might be asking, I don't remember there being money to revitalize downtown buildings in the budget. But what there is money for in the budget is to explore the possibility of creating non-residential building standards, which of course would have a significant impact on downtown buildings. And so I tied that allocation to this particular goal. And down below, a diverse and high-performing employee base. I tied the extra money for the fire department engineer and the SAFER grant money to expand their volunteer base to this goal. All right, this document also contains a number of summary charts and figures on the town budget. As you can see here, here's a chart summarizing our revenues. I wanted to discuss in particular this figure here, a 1.4% decrease. And the reason I wanted to discuss that is because based on all we've heard and based on the warnings I've shared with you so far, you might be asking, only a 1.4% decrease, you were giving us some doom and gloom numbers before. And so I want to explain why it reads that. The reason why is because for the last few years, the town has been intentionally under budgeting. When our fund balance decreased to emergency amount a few years ago, the board implemented a policy to try to build the fund balance back up. And we have been able to do that. And essentially the way we've been doing that is budgeting less than what we actually expected to collect. So even though our budget last year was only 9.7 million roughly, we collected, or we expect to collect significantly, well, I don't want to say significantly, but noticeably more than that. And that number will, those extra funds will of course go into our fund balance and help us build back up our rainy day fund. But this year's numbers are actually closer to what we actually expect to collect. So just to repeat, the last few years, the numbers have been artificially low. We've collected more than we budgeted and put that in fund balance. This year, we're budgeting closer to what we actually expect to collect. And those figures are 10% or so more less than what our actual financial capacity has been over the last few years. So any questions or comments on that? So 1.4% less than what we budgeted last year, but around 10% less than what we expect to collect in the current year. All right, so I'll move forward. Here's our schedule of fees. Again, these are all the same as they were in the current year, with the exception of our water and sewer rates here. And finally, we'll get into the specific funds. Actually, our budget is two major funds, the general fund and the water sewer fund. We consider the budget to be a single thing, but it's actually two funds. And the reason why I say that's separate is because although you can pay with water sewer expenses with general fund dollars, we can't use the rates we collect from our water sewer collections to fund general fund services. There are a few exceptions to that, but in general, that's the rule of thumb. So I'm going to talk about the funds as sort of separate budgets. You can see here a summary of our various revenue sources in the general fund. Again, property taxes being the biggest one. We actually expect those to go up a little bit this year. Remember, property tax is more resilient, and we probably won't start to see a dip in property tax until next year and subsequent years. But our other significant sources of revenue, you can see here, our interest on investments, donations, sales tax, and so forth, all have notable decreases. The one large increase here is the SAFER grant. So we put the SAFER grant into this category, and that's why you have an 800% increase there. All right, we'll move on to general fund expenditures. As you can see here, the expenditures are balanced with what we expect to collect in revenue. As you can see here, some departments went up, some departments went down, but with very few exceptions, the increases are about what the natural increase would be for the cost of doing business. So for example, I'm going to talk a little bit later about our pay plan and what we hope to do with compensation for our employees. I'm going to recommend a 2.5% increase. And so you'll see that most of these increases here are around the 2.5% range. So in most cases, the increases are attributable to that and not to any increase in programming or increase in operational cost. And as a matter of fact, I want to acknowledge Joe here. You see his went up 2.16%, but that's because his budget contains proceeds from borrowed money to pay for the police cars. But in all other operational lines, his went down. So although you see a total increase on his in his operating area, he was able to find significant efficiencies, and his budget would have been lower if it weren't for those automobile proceeds. All right, a few charts here. I used the categories that we established our subcommittees with to show the percentage of dollars that goes to each program. So as you can see, about half of our budget goes to public safety, police and fire. 35% goes to physical environment. So that's public works, water, sewer, so forth. 8% goes to recreation and culture, and 10% to governance and administration. And then in this table here, you can see what people in the academic world and the accounting world call object classes. So our total and percent of expenditures by these various categories. Again, you can see, it's pretty clear just by looking at this table, that the vast majority of our budget, the vast majority, more than half, goes to paying our employees. And here's a pie graph with that information. All right, this table here shows how the expenses in those various categories have changed over the last 3 years. And then finally, we get into the detailed information for the departments. The governing board, you all are considered a department for budgetary purposes. You can see here that your budget's gone up slightly. Most of that is attributable to the higher High Country Council of Government dues that we're expecting this year. You can see a summary of your budget by category here. And then when we scroll to the next page, you'll see the line item detail that's been allocated for your budget. All right, move down to administration. This is Debbie Pearson and I. Same thing here. Moving down to finance, Connie's group. And I'm just gonna scroll quickly through these, but I'd recommend studying those in more detail when you get your own copy of this. The Christmas Cheer Fund, we sort of consider it a department for budgetary purposes. It stayed flat. Legal, we went to the, we decided to maintain the part-time model. Did not fund the full-time attorney, but I did recommend, and I do recommend here that we increase the amount of this budget to $60,000 as a hedge against not only our new attorney, whoever he or she may be in the next few months, charging us more, but also because, frankly, we've just been using the attorney more over the last few weeks, and I imagine that's going to continue as the crisis goes on. So this budget went up from 40-something thousand to 60,000 in my recommended budget. And there are the line item figures for that budget. Planning and inspections. This one went up significantly, but I want you to remember that we did a budget amendment in the middle of the year to give this department a little more money. This figure last year, 201,000, we discovered that that wasn't a realistic figure for this department to operate with. And so we gave them a bump. So their bump in the coming fiscal year is a little bit smaller than 15%. But that's just the number here because that's what was originally budgeted. As I said before, this budget also includes $1,000 more than we originally gave it to fund the study of a non-residential building code. And here are the line items. Tourism, you can see here. Line items for Crystal. Public buildings is not a department. You'll see here that there are not any personnel expenses. This is essentially just the money we keep in our pocket to help pay for improvements to public facilities. So if the air conditioning went kaput on Town Hall tomorrow, this is the fund we'd use to pay for its repair. And those are the line items. Police, here's the big budget. As you can see, this accounts for 33%, almost a third of our entire general fund budget. Again, it went up in total about 2.2%, but you can see that by the object classes here, it actually went down in each category. And you'll see that in more detail here in the line items. And those line items cover 2 pages. Separation allowance is just a separate pot of money we keep to pay retiree payments when folks retire. Our garage here, just scroll quickly through here. Fire department, so this one will be a big increase, and that's attributable to the extra money from the SAFER grant, as well as the extra money that I'm recommending we give the fire department to hire the 4th full-time engineer. So know that that 17.4% figure is artificially higher because of the federal grant dollars that this budget includes. And you can see their line items there. General Fund Public Services, this is half of Dale Shoemake. Streets Department is what it is. Again, another artificially large increase here. Know that this is attributable to us taking the 2 full-time equivalent positions that used to live in the Powell bill budget and putting them here. So this budget went up by a lot, but the net effect on the entire city budget is 0. So this is just moving money around. And they're the line items. Powell bill, you can see, has been sent to 0. Those employees sent up to the streets budget, and the actual Powell bill dollars themselves will be in the general fund capital reserve, awaiting us to use them on a eligible project here in the coming years. Sanitation, their budget was artificially large last year because it included the proceeds, or when I say last year, I mean the current year that we're in. Their budget was artificially large because it included the proceeds of the new truck financing. So their decrease is enhanced because of that. The current, or the new year figure will contain our yearly principal and interest payment on those proceeds. And there's their line items. Recreation, you can see, about flat, a nominal 2% increase. In the budget, it's called the cemetery department, but it's better known as the Green Thumb Landscaping Crew. You can see their budget there. Special appropriations. Okay, so this is kind of a hodgepodge department. This includes not only the funds that the town needs to pay for retirement and healthcare related expenses, but this also includes our money that was set aside to contribute to nonprofits. And you can see those line items here. And it also includes the table with the nonprofit funding that we talked about at the workshop. Transfers, this is just an accounting line. You can see the Powell bill transfer is booked here. All right, debt service. So this is the principal and interest payment on the capital project that was started a handful of years ago. Kind of can share with us if you're curious how many years ago, but this was for the money we borrowed to improve the Yadkin Valley Marketplace, the 6th Street improvements, and the Greenway improvements we've made over the last several years. So as you can see, it's decreased by a nominal amount as we get closer to paying it off. Contingencies. So this is the extra revenue that we hope to collect and that we haven't applied to any department to use on during special circumstances like funding the small business program. Or if we don't need to spend it in the coming year, it'll be added to our fund balance at the end of the year. This originally started at around $70-some thousand, but when you elected not to fund the full-time attorney, that extra money was folded into this account. Still smaller than what we allocated last year, however. All right, we'll move to the water and sewer fund. As you can see here, a brief discussion of the recommended rate increase. 2% on both the base fee and the consumption fee for ordinary customers, and a 9-cent increase to the wholesale rate over each of the next two fiscal years. One qualification that I want to point out here in this document is that the extra revenue that we anticipate getting from these new rates is not included here. The figure here is what we project to receive with current rates decreased by 10% to account for expected losses on collections and consumption. Excuse me, I guess I should say down here. And here's a summary of the various expenses in the water sewer fund. Again, by class. Since they deal in infrastructure and large and complex facilities, they have higher supplies and operational costs. So even though the salaries of the folks in the water and sewer department constitute the majority of their spending, it's not quite as big a difference as it is in the general fund. The special appropriations are what the retiree insurance and so forth that's paid from the water fund. Transfers, these are, I think this is the money that we get from Wilkesboro to pay for the Kerr Scott, retiring the Kerr Scott debt. Utility billing, that's a general fund-like service. It's Jody down at the desk collecting payments. That's paid for by the water sewer fund because the vast majority of things she processes are the monthly water payments. She has a pretty significant professional services line item because the act of sending the bills is something that we outsource. So we have a vendor that actually sends the bills, mails them for us. Utility public services, this is the other half of Dale Shoemate. Water plant, you can see here. They were able to find some efficiencies that you'll see when we get to the line item detail. But I have to say that part of this almost 6% decrease is us moving water tank maintenance expenses from this budget and into another. And I'll point that one out when we get to it. Water and sewer maintenance, these are the folks that dig the holes in the ground and make sure that those pipes are in good repair. This 36% increase includes that water tank maintenance money that we moved from the other department. Nope. Wastewater treatment plant, about as flat as you can get. Pump stations. All right, contingencies. So you'll see that the contingency line item here is significantly less. And that's just another acknowledgement that our revenue projections are closer to reality, what we actually expect to collect. And we don't have as much wiggle room in this year's budget that we had in the past. All right, the other thing that this budget contains that previous budgets haven't is a capital improvement plan. A capital improvement plan is a forecast of significant capital expenses that we expect over the next 10 years. And when you approve the budget, I'm also going to ask you to approve this plan. Now remember, this is just a forecast. We'll go over this every year and we'll change it from year to year depending on what our goals are, what we can afford. But it would be a great symbol for staff and I to have you approve this along with the budget so that we know that these are things that we should work on in the coming year. And that's essentially what this narrative says. I'll move on down to the next page. We'll start with the general fund. As you can see, other than the things we've already committed to, there are no new capital expenses in the general fund budget for this year. Next year, there are a lot, almost $800,000 worth, but that's just a wish list. We know that we probably won't be able to afford $800,000 of expenses next year. So we'll have to go through at some point and prioritize these. But I ask you to consider approving this anyway, just so we can start working towards these projects. I can send you a document that lists the detail through FY30, but just for formatting purposes, we've only included the detail for the next 4 fiscal years and then lumped the remaining 6 fiscal years in here together. So if this number surprises you, just know that that's 3.7 million over 6 years. That's not a 1-year liability there. Down to the water sewer capital improvement fund. Again, these items up at the top are the ones that are included already in the budget. If with our proposed rate increase, we raise a little bit more money, these are the capital projects that we'll try to pay for in FY21. This, I think, is the most important explanatory document on why the water rate increase is important, because it shows that our liabilities are going to increase over the next few years. We already are committed to paying $538,000 next year, $403,000 the year after that, and that's without any of this stuff down here. This stuff is pretty important too. So these are just the commitments that we've already made. But clearly we've got some more things that we need to do to keep our water system in good repair. These figures are estimates, and you can see there's some notes at the bottom that talk a little bit about how I arrived at the estimate. But just know that these can change. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, even though what I'm going to say might sound good, but one of the impacts of a falling economy is that some of these prices might actually go down. Construction firms looking for work will probably bid more competitively on some of these big projects we've got coming up in the next few years. So we might actually pay less than what's projected here. But for projection's sake, I wanted to do it conservatively and make sure that we budgeted more than we actually needed for those projects. And then finally, the last thing that this budget contains is a glossary of some terms that are usually seen in these kind of documents. Not all of them are in here, but if you read enough budgets like I do, you've seen all these terms. And so if there's something you see in the document that you're not sure what it means, you can refer to the glossary here. So finally, I'll conclude by saying that even though this budget is smaller than last year's budget, there are no significant cuts to services at the moment. I think that we're going to be able to fund all our services with the money budgeted here. That being said, this budget is still a snapshot of our financial situation at this point in time. We've tried to project what the impacts of the virus are going to be on the budget, but as the crisis unfolds, I can say that those are just guesses and that they might change. And so I offer this to you as the budget that I think we can meet and make work. But I do want you to prepare yourself mentally to perhaps take actions mid-year on the budget. So know that even though we are doing this because we have to, this might not be the final word on our budget for FY21. So any comments or questions? I've been talking for a while.
I kind of like the format, Wilson. This is Andrew.
Thanks.
I agree. I think you've made it very clear and easy to understand, even to someone who is outside of the board. Good work, Wilson. I appreciate it.
And I will say that, there might be some typos in here. So if you're reading through it and you see some things that don't make sense, please bring them to my attention so that I can correct them. We'll make sure that the version that goes public is free of those. But the substance of the document is accurate.
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and schedule a public hearing for June 2nd, 2020 of the budget you have presented tonight.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, excuse me for a second. All right, we'll go for the roll call now. Andrew?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And Bert?
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, any last comments on that?
Are you are they gonna send us that printed form, or is that gonna be digital?
I'll send electronically at first. If you'd like a hard copy, let me know and I'll make sure one gets to you.
I would like a hard copy, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna send you the digital one first, but just know I didn't forget about you.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's move on to the next item, which is related. And that is a water rates resolution. So like I mentioned before, the contracts that we have with the rural water associations, in at least 2 instances, require us to follow a particular procedure for raising the rates. And one of those procedures is we notify them by May 15th, which is before the agenda is approved, of what we intend to raise the rates to. And so I feel like I need some official action by you all agreeing to those rates so that we can contact them and say that that's what our intention is. So again, just a brief review. The rates will go up from their current level, which is $2.10 per 1,000 gallons of treated water, to $2.19 in FY21 and $2.28 in FY22. Wilkesboro's is $2.28 this year, and it's going to move up to $2.35 in subsequent years. And Elkins is already at $3.50. So this increase still represents a significant bargain for those associations. And there's a resolution here in your agenda packet that I'll ask you to approve. One of the things I'd also like to show you is some information that staff and I have been working on to try to sell this increase to people because we know that it's kind of a tough sell to pass an increase right now during these tough economic times. And so I'd like to show you this here. And we'll figure out ways to distribute this. This is a mock-up of an infographic that we're going to refine a little bit more and try to send out. And it shows that an average house will pay $1.24 a month next year. A large factory will pay $101 per month more next year. But remember that they use hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gallons. And so for the scale of what they use, $101 more a month is still a great bargain. A restaurant will use about $2, will pay about $2 more per month. And for that, they'll help pay for a $2 million water tower, a $3 million plant upgrade, and perhaps a $1.7 million sewer pipe replacement. So little numbers up there help us fund big numbers down here. And we'll make this available to you, and we'll push this out so that folks know we're not just lining our pockets, but we're actually going to use this extra money for some pretty significant projects.
Wilson, I really like the graphics you've created to explain the reasons for the water increases. I think that will help people understand.
Wilson, this is Andrew. It might be helpful to consider on those graphics if you put, like, particularly the top portion, and this may be too much information, but it's just a thought, like the average, I guess, bill you're going on. So like if you're saying the average house has a bill of whatever that number was calculated on, so they could say, oh, well, my bill's less than that, so it'll be less, or mine's more than that, and it might be a little more.
Okay.
Also, I think the sale to the public probably, and I don't even really like to use that word, sell to the public, to explain it to the public, I think they maybe, I feel like they would understand that there's infrastructure. I think the question that they may need an answer to is why now? Because I've seen a lot of people that, you know, they hear a rate increase, you know, not sure what my job's going to be like. And from the information that I've seen, as far as the critical or highest priority infrastructure things, I believe that given if they saw those facts the way it was presented to us, they would say, okay, it's not going to be that big of a increase on my bill. And if it's important that we do it now to get ahead of these things that maybe we're a little behind on or something, they would understand versus just, we need this money to pay for these expensive things. So I think the why now portion may be something that we need to address a little better, if that makes any sense.
Yes, sir. Understood.
I agree. I agree. I don't agree that, I don't like. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can I add something too, Wilson?
Yes, sir.
I've really thought about this a whole lot because it's really stressed me, worrying about the community. Even though it's a small amount, from a morale standpoint for the community, I feel like they could be like, gosh, you know, everything's hard right now and they're going to increase it more. And the thing that I would say from my heart is, it's not a huge increase per month, but by looking at the numbers myself as a citizen and not so much as an elected official, I feel like this is something that it's so important that we get in front of, because it's our water and our sewer. It's the backbone of our town. And like, we have to be ahead of that, not behind it. And it's almost like if you had a roof on your house and, you know, it's a 30-year roof and it's year 29 or 31 or 35. I mean, I don't feel like it's things we can put off. I just feel like that, you know, if we pushed it back 6 months and amended the budget later, even if we pushed it back a year, we're not guaranteed that the economy is going to be better next year. And you can almost argue that if the economy is even worse next year, and there may be people that can't pay their bills and that number can be higher than we projected, then we may need a little of that extra money to cover for that from the people who can't afford to pay their bill. And I've thought about this a lot, and I just want to know the people in the community that are out there listen, that like, as a citizen, I also think it's the right thing to do, although I see optically that it looks and sounds bad. And I just appreciate their understanding for that viewpoint. Thank you.
So just a procedural note, the resolution today is merely for the wholesale rates. You still are able, and frankly, you'd be able to change this too. But we're not passing any resolution or making any commitment today for the in-town rates. This applies only to the wholesale rates so that we can meet our contractual obligation.
Will that be up for discussion at like the public forum thing?
Yes.
Okay. And this rate increase is also for 2%, right? It was a 9 cents, but is that calculated?
I don't even know what percentage that is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just we dealt with that one in pennies rather than in percentages.
Okay. But we're 10 cents less than what Wilkes-Barre is at that wholesale rate?
Well, currently they are 228.
And what are we?
We're 210 at the moment.
So, but we will go to 218.
We'll go to 219 and eventually to 228 to match it.
Not to complicate things, but is there any significant reason why we chose 219 instead of 227?
We wanted to spread the burden over 2 years.
Okay.
Just to make it a little easier for the water associations to meet.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution of intent to raise wholesale water rates by 9 cents per 1,000 gallons in fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22.
I'll second that. This is Andrew.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Andrew.
Yes.
Angela.
Yes.
Debbie.
Yes.
Bert, thumbs up or thumbs down?
I'm up.
Okay.
I'm there. I'm up.
Michael.
I'm up.
Okay. All right. We will notify the water associations with this information. All right. So moving on to the last item on the agenda. Well, I should have checked to see if he was still there. Jimmy, you still around? Yeah.
Yes, I'm still here.
All right, so let's move on to the next item. So one of the increases in this year's budget was extra money to hire a fourth engineer at the fire department. But there are grants available, although they're very competitive, to help defray these costs. And so we're here to request that you give us the permission to apply for one of these grants. And Jimmy's here to share a little bit more about this specific grant.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This grant is actually assistance to the fire department grant. It's actually through the SAFER grant. It will pay for 75% of a full-time employee for the first 2 years. And the last year, it'll pay 35% for that employee's wages and benefits. But the town needs to pick up the fourth year. I think it's not going to cost us anything to apply for this grant unless we receive the grant and awarded the grant. It's going to cost the town $500.
So if I can just share candidly, I think this one's a no-brainer because we've got the full freight for this person included in the budget anyway. And if we apply for and win this grant, it'll be all extra money.
Yes.
Can we make a motion now?
If you'd like, yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to authorize town staff to apply for a 3-year FEMA SAFER grant to help fund the cost of an additional full-time firefighter in the future year 21. Recommend the budget. Is that correct?
That's it. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, Andrew?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Bert?
Good.
Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all. All right. So that's the last item I have on the agenda. We'll move now to mayor and commissioner topics. If there are any topics that weren't on the agenda that you'd like to share with the group, please do so.
Wilson, this is Andrew. I would just like to say thanks to you and Debbie for your work with the EDC grant, and particularly with Debbie coming back with that $30,000 number, because I feel like in the end, it kind of set an example for what Wilkesboro and the county could do. And she came out and said that number, and I think it was a good place to start. So thank you guys for your work on that.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, any closing remarks? If you got any, unmute yourself.
Is it unmuted now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I must have hit it with my thumb or something. Anyways, thanks to the full board for all their hard work on this, and especially to you and Connie and the other department heads that put all this budget together. And to Michael's point earlier, Michael, I promise you when we meet tomorrow that we will do some discussion on the business part of trying to get what we can done to get the businesses back up and going. I appreciate your thoughts, and to the rest of the board members, have a good evening. God bless you and stay safe, and hopefully we can get past this virus business and get back to some normal conditions and being able to come and go as we have in the past and as we please. That's all I've got, Wilson. Unless anybody else has anything, I'm gonna give a little pause. And if not, I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I
To
would like
adjourn.
All
Michael
right.
and Andrew on there. All right, so I'll do it this time, Mayor. All in favor, log off.
Okay, thank you.
Wilson, please check your email. I sent you one, please.
Yes, sir.
And Chief, I appreciate you being here and doing what you do, sir.
Thank you, sir.